Great! We've talked about a few of the Kennedys in these episodes. We've talked about John F. Kennedy. And we certainly talked about the Kennedy dynasty. And so, today we'll be talking about another Kennedy. This time, we're gonna be talking about Ted Kennedy. His real name? Edward M. Kennedy. Let's get this show started. Bong 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 Lurkson 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 dun 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 dun. Ted Kennedy. Let's get this show really started. One note from Little Sean, that I'm talking about before we start this episode. Alright guys, fun fact before we move on. JFK asked to be Ted's godfather. So that's interesting, and I'm just gonna go back to the podium and try to get elected in the stick figure world. Ladies and gentlemen, while we leave him to be, let's move on. So, Ted Kennedy's real name was christened Edward M. Kennedy. Now, of course, he was a Catholic. And the party that he went on to, be part of was the Democratic Party. And currently, all the Kennedys who have ever existed have been Democrats, as to their goodwill. And this guy, Ted Kennedy, was born at an early age. This is a photo of him with his father. I finally was able to find a good photo of him, at least a high-resolution photo. Ted Kennedy was born on February 22nd of 1932. Of 1932 in Boston, Massachusetts. And he was born on the 200th birthday of the General and President, Little Me. Warning, this is a pre-recorded message. Little Me may be a bit glitchy. George Washington. Alright, so there goes glitching me, and this is one of the reasons why John F. Kennedy asked Ted to be named George Washington Kennedy. Kind of a ridiculous name if think about it. And that's a ridiculous name. They're way better off with Teddy Kennedy, especially with Edward M. Kennedy. That's way better off. Anyways, that was how everything seemed to start off with. After that, some more high. This is a photo that was taken that was used when I watched the video about Ted Kennedy talking about his experiences as childhood and all of his other experiences too. This time said that his father told him that Ted, if you have to choose what your life choice will be. You have to choose your life path. And if you don't want to choose the usefulness of the life that you could choose, then I'll tell you that I have other children who will choose that useful life. So you have to choose your life, Ted. And that way, Ted Kennedy actually got a taste of politics at his beginning of his life. Because of his father, Patrick's ambitious dreams of getting political power, no matter what. More ha 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 ha. Shing. Yeah, he wasn't really that much. Anyway, he tried to become president anyway, so that kind of justifies what he's done. And because of his political ambitions, Ted Kennedy's life was kind of affected majorly. They had to move, and by the age of 11 years old, Ted had already attended 10 schools. Meaning that technically he had average grades, but not as good as the grades that his older siblings got. And just as the Kennedy parents did with their sister Rosemary, who got a bit, mad, I guess, or some sort of other thing. Ted Kennedy was compared on his grades on his grades compared to the ones of his older brothers. A+, B+, A, which would technically lower down his morale, but it didn't do that. Instead, it decided to make him a way better person. Not the person that could always move and always get bad grades, but of course, he would pass. And eventually he did. He went to the Milton Academy High School for 4 years, I think. That's what I know. And he passed high school with B's and C's in his grades. After that, just like in the footsteps of his older siblings, pop, 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 wong, da 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 da, hum, da da da. Ooh. He went to Harvard College, just as his brothers did, and he was pretty good, except for Spanish. He was also a good football player, and he had a very defensive and on-hands part during the football team. However, after he realized that if he failed his Spanish class, well then, he would not be allowed to play football. So he was very desperate to do that. Eventually, he even bribed another student to do the test for him. And then eventually he bribed another test and paid someone else for him to do it on his behalf. And that way, he passed. Ding, ding, ding. Too well. And he was like, hey, they wouldn't find out, right? Yeah, they wouldn't find out, right? Well, it turns out Harvard found out. Yelling the school's motto, Veritas. Huh? Eventually, Harvard did expel him. Oof. But then later, he was told that if he was a good boy for 2 years, then he will be allowed to re-enroll into Harvard. And what did he do with those 2 years? What any old sensible college man would have done who has been expelled and has given us a second chance to return in 2 years later. Enlist in the army. Where did that door come from? Hey, it's little me. Great, my speech is over. Okay, great. Alright, so what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to tell you about military service of Teddy Kennedy. Hey, I'm invisible. Black mode, please. That's better. Anyways, this is what he did. He served in the United States Army from 1951 to 1953. And the rank he ended up with was in the private first class. And his unit was the Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers in Europe. Also, let's take a look down here. Please someone draw me a balancing rod? Or whatever. There we go. Whoop. Whoop. There we go. Anyways, if you look down there, you would see in the star, a dog served as acting chair during Kennedy's medical leave. And, well, that's kind of the point. That's just a little cover-up that the Wikipedia wanted to talk about. I used other sources too, alright? And so Little Me does have a point there. And that's what we're just going to talk about. After that, he went back to Harvard University, but then he did graduate, and he did better than before. However, he was not allowed, his grades weren't good enough to be admitted into the Harvard Law School as his brothers did. So instead, he went to another school. That other school was called the University of Virginia Law School instead. And so yeah, after that, there was a lot of rousy housing. But then his first political job went into work. Notes, take us there. Actually, Mini-Me, take over. Thanks, Big Me. Now this is what you need to know. After Kennedy graduated, he actually went to become part of his brother's political campaign, including JFK. But then, he was assassinated. And later, RFK, who was also assassinated. Wow, do the Kennedys have a curse on them? Anyways, get out of the notes. Ugh, I'm invisible. Dark mode. Thank you. Anyways, move up to the next slide, please. This was his second job after having his own little affairs. He went to become the Senate Majority Whip in office from January 3rd to 1969. But wait, on that Later that year of 1969, a great tragedy struck, called the Chappaquiddick, I know, a very weird name, incident. And now here's how it goes. So Kennedy was at a reunion party of RFK's political, helpers. And this girl by the name of Jo, at least according to Teddy Kennedy, asked Teddy to drive her to her home, to her hotel, because she felt so tired. However, there was one weird thing though. She left her purse and her hotel key behind, and she didn't tell anyone that she was leaving at all. Strange. Now, based on all of the stories I've heard from both the sheriff, and Ted himself, this is what I've concluded. Oh yeah, I've also listened to these guys. So this is the story I've concluded with. So Ted was driving along the road to get all the way to a place. Anyways, they were heading back to a place to have, as what I believe, some inappropriate thing that I should not mention, but if the adults are watching, then I should say so. At least according to some conspiracy theorists, and this is the most convincing situation, and they were going to plan to have some sex. However, this woman was already married, and he was already married at the time. He hadn't divorced yet. And so this girl's husband was a powerful political person. And so he didn't want to get found out. And then he accidentally strayed onto an officer who was like, wait, what? Who read L7 starting the license plate and 7 ending the license plate of the car. So suddenly the car drives back, and then they head all the way onto the beach. And then they strayed across this bridge, which had no, places to prevent the car from straying off back then. Instead, it was just a plain old bridge for people to cross. And the car went right up there, and let's zoom in, and the car tipped off the car and splashed. Ted didn't report the incident until almost 10 hours later. Because of that 10 hours thing, the court couldn't find enough evidence because it was like 10 hours long, so it could have been a bit stray or sing, and they couldn't really do much sing. But the public was like, hey, Ted is kind of getting sus. Ted is being sus. He could be a murderer. But then later that day, a few days later, he makes an address called the Chappaquiddick Address, which I am going to do later on this channel. And that is just one of the not of the best things that has ever happened on this channel and on the history of the United States for a long time. But somehow he's convinced that he's not that person, and that is how the story ends up with. You can watch the speech yourself. I think it's on ABC News. But anyways, then he's still Senate Majority Whip. From January 3rd to 1969. And then on January 3rd of 1979, he became the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. From January 3rd of 1979 all the way to January 3rd of 1981 for 2 years exactly. Later, he became the chair of the Health Committee, in office from January 3rd of 2007 to August 25th of 2009. But let's go to the previous dates. He was originally there, first of all, on January 3rd of 1987 to January 3rd of 1995. Then, however, he then went on to the January 3rd of 2001 to January 20th of 2001. Later, back there on January 6th of 2001. So January 3rd of 2003 for 2 years, and later, January 3rd of 2007 to August 25th of 2009. He was on leave from June 9th to August 25th, 2009. So that kind of shortens it to January 3rd of 2007 to June 9th of August 25th of 2009. June 9th of 2005. He was also the United States Senator from Massachusetts, too. He held office on November 7th of 1962 all the way until his death on August 25th of 2009. He was buried at Arlington Cemetery. He is one of the most influential Kennedys of all time. He is one of the 3 Kennedys who have influenced major American politics other than Joe Kennedy Sr. And for all of the times I've been talking about the Kennedys on this channel, one thing has been common. The Kennedys always had a tragic death, or at least a tragic incident happening to them. That makes me to believe that the Kennedy curse is real. But what about you guys? Well, I'll leave you to be. And that is the end of this episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And if you guys did enjoy this episode, then please like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys in another episode of Dark Sean for a new history video. See you soon. Sean Han out. Peace. Dun dun dun.